Are we? Wait, you unmuted us?
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody who is watching our live stream webcast right now. Welcome to the third and final Ocean Challenge webcast of the school year. This webcast is hosted by Global Nomads Group and Students Rebuild in support of the 2019 Ocean Challenge, where we are inspiring and activating young people and older than young people everywhere to step up and take action to protect and save our oceans. Today, we are in conversation specifically about the actions that young people are taking in their local communities, either to address recycling, pollution, other issues that they're finding in their local areas as they relates to our larger ocean conversation. My name is Afia Williams, and I'm joining you live from New York City in the Global Nomads Group office. I'm joined by my team who are off camera, and as always, I am honored to host this conversation today with these amazing young people. For our returners, you'll notice we have a slightly different format. We just have four superstars here for you that are going to talk to you and talk to each other about their stories. Today, we have students joining from Millburn, New Jersey, Davenport, Iowa, and Gray, Maine. To those of you who are watching from your school or from your office, please use our chat room. It should be right next to your view screen. Please use the chat room, and you can start by introducing yourselves to your school and your location, and go ahead and start telling us what you love about the ocean. You are invited to engage each other in conversation, and please also share your questions for the on-screen students, and we'll do our best to include them in our conversation today. Now we'll get started. The first thing we'll do, of course, is introduce our students, and I'm going to have them all introduce themselves. You're going to go to Jessica first. You want to introduce yourselves, and then ladies, you know your order. We'll just go around.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Jess Elliot. I am a senior at Davenport Central High School. So I live in Davenport, Iowa, which is in pretty much the middle of the Midwest. And I guess a fun fact about my town is that right now we are super flooded and we actually made national news for being really, really flooded. So that's what's going on in my area right now.
Hello. I'm Arabella, and I go to Millburn Middle School. I live in New Jersey, and my town is Millburn. And a fun fact is that in New Jersey, it is illegal for birds to poop on statues.
Hello, my name's Grace. I also go to Millburn Middle School with Arabella. I live in Short Hills, New Jersey, and one fun fact is that the New York Red Bulls are actually in New Jersey and not New York.
Hi, I'm Allison McDonald. I'm from Gray, Maine, and I go to Gray New Gloucester High School. A fun fact about Maine is that there are 3,166 offshore islands on the coast of Maine, making its coastline longer than that of California.
Thank you, ladies. Those are actually some really cool facts. I think they might even come back up in our conversation later, a few of those. So thank you. And again, welcome to everyone on screen and off screen. We're going to get started. We are going to start by hearing again from each of our young ladies about how they first fell in love with the ocean and what inspired them to take action. And then we'll go a little deeper. Anybody can start.
I guess I can start. So I first fell in love with the ocean when my family traveled from Iowa to California along the coast. We were visiting a family friend and we went boogie boarding, and I just really, really loved it. And I was like, wow, the ocean is a really cool, like, undersea world that no one really knows about, especially back in Iowa. Like, none of my friends had really ever seen the ocean either, and nobody really knew that much about it because we never saw it in the Midwest. So I realized that a lot of people living in this area don't care about the ocean to the extent that a lot of people on the coast do, and they don't value it with as much value as it should have. So this year, I started to give virtual reality presentations to elementary schoolers in the area. So I would go into their elementary schools, talk a little bit about like the ocean and the animals and its ecosystems, and then what it's dealing with right now with like overfishing and plastic pollution and how we can help that situation. And then I took virtual reality headsets and I'd pass them around the room, and each student could like look around and actually see like the underneath of the ocean, which they'd never been able to see before, things like that. So it started building a love for the ocean and an appreciation for it at more of a young age than it would have been before. So that's what I started to do. And while they were waiting for their turn with the virtual reality, they would make the little creatures for the Student Rebuild Ocean project this year. So that's how I kind of incorporated that. And then my virtual reality presentation led me to give a TEDx youth talk, the first in our area. And I gave it about ocean pollution and plastic pollution specifically, and then how one individual can actually make a difference. And I guess that's my story right now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jessica. Allison, why don't we hear from you?
So my state is directly bordering the East Coast, so I've been interacting with the ocean since I was really young. I live about 20 or 30 minutes away, so it's a very short drive to get to the ocean, and we go there every summer. Just being close to the ocean and knowing that ocean issues directly affect my state's economy and my community made me really want to start doing things to help the ocean, especially with things like pollution and ocean acidification. So I'm more of a shy person, so it's harder for me to go out and make a bigger difference in the community. So I decided to start with something smaller. I started a social media account to post about the environment and advocate for changes. I would research different issues about the ocean and pollution and such, and share them on my social media account so other people can know more about it. It's a fairly new account, so there hasn't been much of a reaction yet, but I'm hoping to make it bigger in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace and Arabella. Draw straws, but we want to hear your stories too.
Okay, so I first fell in love with the ocean when my family went to visit my aunt down in Florida, and we visited this man-made reef and got to see all the fish. And so this year, in science, we had to do a human impact hour project, and I decided to do some more research on how global warming affects the ocean. And I decided to make a website to bring more awareness on how global warming affects the ocean. Thank you.
So I was born in Europe, and so we went to Croatia for vacation once because we live like close, and so the water there was like really beautiful, and I had always loved sand. And then so when we moved to the US and we were only about an hour away from the ocean, we went a lot more frequently, and we'd go to Florida sometimes and visit the ocean. And so this year, we're doing the Human Impact Projects in Science, like Grace said. And so mine is based more on the different types of plastic and how each plastic is, if it can be recycled, and it's about that. Also, we have a peer leader program in our school, and me and Grace both take part in the environmental related group. Thank you.
Thank you all. Such great starts to our conversation. All of your stories have this grounding in seeing or being involved with the ocean, or realizing the distance from the ocean, but you recognize how it plays a role in your life, and it's inspired you to do something, even if you're starting small in your schools and in your local community, which is very good. In our chat room, what are you guys up to? What inspired you to love the ocean, and what's inspired you to take action for the ocean? You can tell us some of your stories as well. What are you up to in your schools or your local communities? And now we want to jump in a little more. And I know, ladies, you've prepared questions for each other and have some discussion to have. And so I don't know who would like to go first. Grace and Arabella, maybe you guys want to start with one of your questions for Jessica or Allison.
So I had a question for Jessica. So she mentioned how she wanted to do something later on in her life related to the ocean. And so I was wondering exactly what she was planning on doing and like what kind of field she's planning on going into.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
Currently I have committed to attend the University of North Carolina Wilmington next year, and I will be a part of the honors program, which gives me a lot of different opportunities. So I'm planning on, at this point, double majoring in marine biology and environmental science, and to sort of work together in those two fields to learn more about how I can make an influence. And then as a part of the honors program, I have the ability to work hand in hand with the professors on their research projects. So I think that'll just give me like the next step towards maybe doing my own research and then spreading awareness about it. I think that answered it.
So Allison, I was just wondering, like, how exactly does the ocean affect your community?
The ocean directly affects Maine's community in general. It's one of the biggest parts of our economy. We do a lot of fishing here, lobster and sea fish and such. And there's a lot of ocean runoff into the water, and just the acidification of oceans makes a lot of the sea creatures' shells softer, which makes it more difficult for them to survive, and also allows for native species to migrate to different areas and for invasive species to migrate in. So it would drastically affect our community and the economy. Thank you.
Grace and Arabella, I have a question for you guys. So you're in 8th grade right now. How do you plan to move forward with your love for the ocean and your projects about it when you move into high school? Thank you.
So, like I mentioned earlier, we're in the peer leader program, and we're pretty sure that the high school has an environmental peer leader like group. And so I'm thinking, I don't know about Grace, but to join that group and also maybe continue with my human impact project into the summer and like can constantly add to it.
My human impact hour project was mostly about, well, is mostly about like how global warming affects the ocean. So I think I'd like to continue bringing awareness to how global warming affects us and the ocean, everything else. Thank you.
I have a quick question for a follow-up for Grace and Arabella. Can you tell us more about what you do in this peer leader's role, and like how does that serve your school?
Well, part of DECO is we go around the school and collect recycling, and then we also make art from some of the recycled materials. Like we're making these dolls out of old T-shirts, and these are donated to a hospital to show kids like the injections and like the IV and stuff, and then afterward they get to keep the doll.
Another project we've been working on is taking chip bags and turning them into purses, and so we'll like cut up old chip bags and fold them and use them to make new items that. And also in DECA, we have been taking part in the Student Rebuild Challenge, where we make art that's related to the ocean, and we take pictures and send it to them, and they donate money towards helping clean our oceans and protecting them.
That's really cool. Are there a lot of people that are peer leaders? Is there a large group of you doing this?
Well, peer leaders is a pretty big thing in our school, but our actual DECO group is pretty small.
It's like 30-ish 7th graders, and I want to say about 100 eighth grade peer leaders.
Not in Deco though. They're not all in Deco.
Yeah, there's like
Just
six.
to
There's
clarify.
like 10.
There's like
Groups.
13.
10 or 13
There's
groups.
like 13 people in Deco.
Awesome. So this sounds similar to what I know people are doing around the world and making art pieces out of recycled materials. And Allison, I know you are part of an environmental club as well. Is that correct? What do you all do? Like, what's your recycling process like in Maine and at your school?
So the club at my school is called Green Tree Society. So they're in charge of recycling at our school and spreading awareness of issues. It's kind of a newer club, so there hasn't been much of an impact quite yet. But just recycling in general, I think they installed the first recycling in our school where you can put food waste and things like that, and not just bottles in the recycling that you can turn in for money. Thank you.
So
Oh, sorry.
You can go.
Okay, sorry, Allison. I actually have another question for you. You said, it says that you did something with a Girl Scout. No, sorry, wait. It says that you did something with a Girl Scout troop.
And
What
we
exactly-
were wondering like what you did exactly, because it was related to plastic and like single use of plastic. Thank you.
Yep. We learned about single-use plastic. That was where I started to first learn about the ocean and the issues that are going on. We learned about single-use plastic and how some plastics end up in the ocean. And we did a few beach cleans where we just went to the ocean and walked along the coast and just picked up garbage we found washing up on the shore and things like that.
That's very interesting. I also had a question for Jessica about her TED Talk. So in it, you were mentioning about the North Pacific garbage patch and how there were also like there were no longer just one, there was now 5, and so I was wondering exactly how that was impacting the environments around it.
Yeah, so those garbage comes from all over the world. Like every country pretty much contributes to those garbage patches, and they've just grown and grown so much that they're impacting the communities below them. So like nothing in the ocean can really thrive underneath them anymore because they're blocking all the light and they're polluting the waters, and like they don't break down. So if something like an animal comes and eats them, it can badly influence the animal. So one of the things that I talked about is that we really need to look toward new innovation toward cleaning up those garbage patches. And that's something that is really important and that we need to spread awareness about so people can learn. Thank you. I actually have a question for Allison as well. So you're using Instagram right now, but have you looked towards looking or using any other forms of social media? Like, have you thought about that at all?
Yes, I have thought about using different types of social media. I feel that Instagram is the easiest one to connect with more people from around the world. Things like Snapchat are very harder to find other people and things like that. I feel like it's easier to build a following and spread awareness with Instagram. So I could look into things like Facebook and stuff like that. Thank you.
I also had a question for you. So you have a social media account, but what exactly do you put on it? Is it like pictures, or is it like quotes? Like what exactly are you putting on your social media account? Thank you.
Yeah. So I usually do some research before, and some of the stuff I've done is research how pollution is affecting coral reefs and how single-use plastic ends up in the ocean and things like that. And a lot of the times I take graphic organizers and things like that and post pictures, and then I'll write below about 10 things you can do to save coral reefs and things like that, just so it's easier for people to kind of understand about what's going on in the ocean. And it's kind of, people don't really look up on the internet, maybe here's a way I can help the ocean. just feel that if I research it myself and post a picture of it, and then maybe people can access it easier and find an easier way to just look at 10 simple things that they can do, and then maybe they'll be more apt to actually do them. Thank you.
I'm going to jump in, Allison, before you wrap up. So we had a question from our chat room that was about living in a landlocked state, or when you live very far from the ocean, what are things that you could do in your own community? So I wonder if you can share with us a few of the 10 things that you could do that people who live in landlocked areas could do. And then ladies, I want to hear from the rest of you if you have ideas for what people in landlocked areas can do to make a difference.
A lot of it was just to try to not use single-use plastic, try to keep things, if you see trash blowing around, to pick it up so it doesn't end up blowing into the ocean. A lot of places that have access to coral reefs will break apart the coral reefs and sell them as jewelry. So one of the things was also to try to not buy things that are coral-based jewelry or sea turtle shells or shark teeth and things like that. And then I also listed, I think, different types of fish that are endangered. Things like sharks too, that are often just, their fins are cut off and then they're thrown back into the ocean because people from around the world eat their fins and not the rest of the shark. So just things like species you can stay away from. I'm not really sure if there's a lot of seafood in landlocked states or sea jewelry and things like that, so I'm not sure if that would help. But just mostly picking up plastic and things like that can help.
Maybe something that they could do if they're in a landlocked state is just show that they like care. Like they could for example, they could like start an environmental club where they do things that are related to things on the coast, and kind of like Students Rebuild, like they could take part in that. They could raise money for charities or just like spread awareness so that other people know about this.
I think also kind of like what Allison said, you can like try and decrease how much you use like plastic bags and plastic straws and things like that.
Don't use plastic straws, they kill turtles.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So speaking from the viewpoint of being in a landlocked state, and sorry, because I think my bell's about to go off, but the biggest thing from a landlocked state is definitely spreading awareness, because then you can influence other states that might not be landlocked or things like that. Personally, in my community, we live right along the Mississippi, which is one of the reasons we're flooded right now. But it's a huge thing because even though we are landlocked, all of our trash, all of our plastic, a lot of it ends up in the Mississippi, which goes right down into the ocean. So we do have that kind of effect, but definitely watching your own carbon footprint in a landlocked state is very important. So watch like how much you drive your car, what your gas mileage is like, things like that. Maybe if you can carpool, just always be aware of it in your head, so you're like thinking about it and making a conscious effort to actually change your ways and not negatively impact the environment. So like reusable water bottle, just simple things like that. Although it doesn't seem like a huge impact, from a landlocked state, our trash sometimes does end up in the oceans. So being aware about that and spreading that awareness is definitely the biggest thing that we can do to help. Thank you.
Another thing to add maybe is that even though they're in a landlocked state, what they do will still have an impact. And if something does happen to the ocean, it will affect them because a lot of the oxygen we breathe comes from the ocean. And even though they're in a landlocked state, this is still going to affect them greatly. Thank you.
Absolutely. Those are all great suggestions, and you're spot on. And we know, again, from Jessica, like the Mississippi goes right into the ocean. And so what happens in the ocean is coming up to Iowa and to Davenport. And I've been there and I've seen the river go right down past the museum, and it's beautiful. But I can imagine filled with trash or running over on the land is not so much fun. And so we see the connection in both directions. And I think that speaks to the louder conversation I think you all mentioned too about like air pollution and how it affects global warming and how these things all in turn affect the ocean. I know, Arabella, you do some other environmental type work too that may not seem like it's directly connected to the ocean. But do you want to share more about the Silver Award Project, I think it is, where you're working in the gardens? And you can share about the For Ocean Project too. You guys spoke about fundraising and ways to support from landlocked. Why don't you tell people about the For Ocean that you learned about as well?
So, For Oceans is, you should totally check them out. They're a group that basically you buy a bracelet from them, and the bracelet is made out of plastic from the ocean. And for every bracelet you buy, you take a pound of trash out of the ocean. They're like a huge group, and they've taken out tons of pounds of trash. And going off of our Silver Award, me and Grace. You can say.
Okay, so me and Arabella are part of a Girl Scout troop that's working on our Silver Award. And so for our Silver Award, we decided to build a garden and teach kids the importance of fresh produce and vegetables. And yeah, thank you.
And we know that like just the greenery also helps the air quality and having fresh produce, like the way we have deal with animals and the vegetables and all of these, the water and the plants, or not having plants and having to drive further, or not having local produce and having to drive further to get good food is maybe car and gas emissions. And so we don't always think about the direct actions of even these other environmental areas that we serve. But this is another example that like even working in a garden can benefit the ocean. I know you were saying, Allison, that there's runoff, and I know in New York we have the curbs that run off so that the water doesn't flood, but it goes into the gardens. So those are some like other ways that we could reuse even the water that comes through our own community to minimize our use of the ocean's water. We've got not a lot of time left, so I want to push us to look ahead. And we are thinking now about like the future and the future of our world and the future of our local communities. I'm curious to know from the actions that you're taking, what else do you want people to know about the work that you're doing? Like how do you see the work you're doing benefiting people in the future, and like how it plays into the larger goal?
I guess I can start. So the work I'm doing awareness-wise has definitely sort of impacted. I'm not taking all the credit for it, but my community has definitely improved in terms of single-use plastics. Like some coffee shops are going more toward either reusable cups or using paper straws or things like that. And a lot of, just even being in my high school, I see a lot of people going around with like reusable, like if they come from Starbucks, you have a reusable Starbucks cup or something like that. Like I'm seeing less and less of those single-use plastics, which is really encouraging to me. It's kind of sad because I will have to be leaving the community that I've grown up in next year, and I'll be pretty much like gone for 4 years. So I don't know exactly how I'm going to continue the like change and the awareness here. But I just hope that the awareness that I've like started just continues and grows over the next years when I'm gone. And I hope that I can learn more and more about how to make a difference when I further my education. Thank you.
Speaking of looking ahead, the first thing I'm thinking of doing is reducing my carbon footprint. Buying reusable bags to use at the grocery instead of buying the paper or plastic bags, or not buying, but getting them. And I'm planning on continuing my work related to the environment in high school and spreading more awareness in our environment.
I think I would also like to continue spreading awareness about like global warming and its effect on the ocean and all that stuff. And also our DECO group like is probably going to continue recycling. And yeah, thank you.
Maine is a pretty green state. We have a lot of acts that help keep pollution down. I think we were the first to ban styrofoam, and that's a really good step in the right direction. However, I still think that there is more that can be done, especially in my community, as oceans are becoming more acidified. The Gulf of Maine is one of the places where it's acidifying the fastest, and that will have a great impact on what life is like here. So especially in my community, I feel that my project, spreading more awareness and maybe even setting up a beach clean, things like that, will help spread awareness so that people stop thinking in the mentality that, oh, it's just one plastic straw, oh, it's just one plastic bag. Because if we all work to reduce our carbon footprint, I think we can make a big change. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison, can you tell us what it means to acidify for any of us who don't live near the ocean?
Yeah, so a lot of the times it's the runoff into the ocean and just more carbon dioxide in the air. The water is starting to warm. It's just changing the climate and the way that the oceans are, the habitats underneath the water drastically. Things like planting kelp gardens or planting eelgrass, they greatly absorb carbon dioxide that is put into the water as carbon dioxide emissions are going up and the oceans are acidifying. I think that could also really help to stop ocean acidification.
That was great. That's a great suggestion. And I skipped over this, but we've got a little more time left. For the projects that you all are doing, are there any challenges that you're facing or that you foresee facing based on the dreams that you have? I know you did a TEDx talk, Jess. Like, were there challenges as it related to preparing that, and like, how was that? Like, how are you feeling with that? Because that feels like a big thing to do.
Yeah, it was pretty terrifying. Not only just the whole preparation process of like, are these the words I actually want to use? And then the presentation process of presenting to an auditorium of about 300 people, and then also having it put on YouTube for the rest of the world to see for forever it was definitely a really terrifying process. And there was also the added layer of, hey, this is a landlocked state. Will people care? Because I'm talking about the ocean, which is really far away on either side. So there was first the level of, wow, I have to give this presentation to a lot of people and I can't mess up. And then the second level of, if I even do this well, like, will people care? And it was definitely scary, but I'm really glad that I did it, because I definitely have seen a change in people sort of looking at it a little bit differently from what I've encountered. Because a lot of people came up to me after the talk and they were like, hey, we didn't realize this before, because I talked about how the ocean does affect us because we are right next to the Mississippi. And we do, even though we are in this landlocked state, we directly impact the ocean, and it will have an impact on us eventually. And so it was very scary. And there were a lot of challenges in the form of getting over my fears to actually give the presentation. But in the end, I'm really glad that I did it, and it's been really worthwhile, and it definitely has been the step pushing me toward, hey, whatever I'm going to do in college, I know I can do this. So I guess that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Ladies, any other challenges that you've been facing? Grace, Arabella?
Well, I think like even if like I raise awareness and like other people raise awareness, it's like we don't really live next to the ocean, so I think it's kind of hard to for like people to like completely understand like what exactly is happening if you don't see like everyday effects, like if you don't actually see it happening in front of you. So
Yeah, going off of what Grace said, a lot of people think that, oh, this isn't going to affect them, like this isn't going to exactly like affect them directly, but it is in the long run. Like a lot of people are thinking that so a lot of people are thinking that this problem is like not their problem, it's the people on the coast, or even the fact that, oh, this isn't going to have like as big of a impact as even when the even when this does happen, it's not, I'm not going to be alive, like it doesn't really affect them, but it will. Like even if it's going to be really bad later on, it still is bad now, and we still have to do something about it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Allison, I want to put you on the spot. If there are no challenges, it's okay. But I want to say if you had any challenges that you wanted to share.
It's definitely hard to start a new social media account and try to build following. And even though we live in Maine, right on the coast, it's hard for a lot of people to change their mindset. Like, what will my impact have to do with anything? My doing a little bit is not going to make a big difference. But if everyone did a little thing, then it would make a bigger difference than what a lot of people realize. So it's definitely been difficult to try to get people to change their minds in that aspect. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all. And so before we close out officially, just want to leave a little room and see if you guys have any other burning questions, or if we have any questions from the chat room that we want to squeeze in before we close out. So last burning questions. It's okay. Totally okay. So let's see if I have any last questions. If there was one thing that you wanted the people in your community to do, just like one super easy thing, what would that super easy thing be?
I think that I would want for the people in our state to write to our governor to show that they care and that they would appreciate if they implemented laws that that affect our carbon footprint, for example, grocery stores can't give out plastic and paper bags, just small things that will have big impacts later on.
Perfect.
Sorry, but I think it would be nice if, kind of like what Arabella said, if all the restaurants in our area also stopped giving us plastic straws. Because I know if I go to a restaurant and my family isn't really big on plastic straws, we have to ask them not to give us plastic straws.
Mm-hmm.
Or straws, no. Thank you.
I guess the one thing that I would want everyone in my community to do is to appreciate our environment and what we have, because we do have a riverfront and it's really polluted. So we need to appreciate that we have that riverfront and take the action to clean it out. And I think the first step toward taking action and actually making a change is first having that appreciation to actually want to do anything about it. So yeah, I want my community to appreciate what we have and appreciate what the rest of the world has as well, so we don't ruin it.
Thank you. And appreciation is free, so that's wonderful. That's super easy. Last but not least, Allison, what's the one thing you want the people in your community to do?
I can definitely agree with Jess about appreciating the ocean. That definitely needs to happen. I also think that use of plastic bags, I think that it should be almost required that we start to phase out plastic bags. It doesn't cost very much to get a reusable bag, and we have a Hannaford in our store. In our town. I'm not sure if you all know what a Hannaford is, but just watching the different plastic bags, all the different plastic bags that are used to bag different groceries. There's a lot of them, and just cutting back and phasing out plastic bags would be a really good thing that we could do to help our community.
Great, thank you all. And as we wrap up in the chat room, why don't you leave us the one thing that you would like your community, whether school or local community, to do? One small, easy thing that can make a big impact if everybody took part. Leave that in our chat room for us. And I want to just recognize these wonderful young ladies who have joined us today for our conversation. Time goes really fast, and we've had a really exciting conversation, and you all are doing some really cool things in your school and online and in the community. So as we wrap this up, I want to give you all the opportunity for one last word that you want to leave our audience with.
I can start. I'd like to share my favorite quote, and it's from like kind of my idol, and the reason I want to do marine biology, Sylvia Earle. And the quote is, "Far and away, the greatest threat to the ocean, and thus to ourselves, is ignorance, but we can do something about that." And I think that quote really fit with the entire, like, I guess, topic of what we've been talking about in this webcast, because the entire time what we've eventually been coming back to is awareness and how you really need to hit home the awareness to actually make any change. And I think that quote really sums it up. So it's my favorite quote.
To sum up everything we've kind of talked about, I think that, people should ask themselves if your and your community isn't going to do anything about this problem, who is going to fix it? And so I challenge you to write a letter to your state, or if you don't live in the US, like your country's government, to ask them to implement some environmental laws.
I think that you should all just be aware of how you affect like the earth and the ocean, and if you don't know how you affect it, try and find out. Maybe do something. Thank you.
And I would also like to end with a quote. The voice of the sea speaks to the soul. That really spoke to me. I feel that if we don't make a change and do something about the direction that we're headed, that we won't have much time with the earth. We don't have much time left on this earth. If we have been making good change, and I feel that if we keep heading in the right direction, there is still a chance to save it. I think just spreading awareness will definitely help with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank all of you, Allison, Jessica, Grace, Arabella. Thank you to everyone who is watching. Thank you for all the educators who registered and who care to spread this awareness in your classrooms. Thank you to all of your teachers who allowed you to be out of class so that you could be in this conversation with us. I know it's the end of the year and it gets really tough with finals and projects. And so we're all very grateful on behalf of Students Rebuild and Global Nomads Group. And we hope that everyone who's listening or talking or chatting, that you learned something, that there was at least one piece of information that was informative and there was one action item that's something that you can do in your local community. As the ladies have said, it takes all of us. We are all responsible for our own actions and to look out for each other, and that includes looking out for our earth. We invite you to continue these conversations in your classroom. How can your local community take action to address the local issues that affect or are affected by the ocean? We're all connected. Visit our websites. Go to studentsrebuild.org or gng.org to learn more about what we do, to hear more stories from young people around the world and what they're doing to help protect the ocean. Last but not least, take the challenge. Form a team and register at studentsrebuild.org and make sea creatures out of whatever materials you have lying around the house or the school and submit them. We are raising money for organizations around the world to help their efforts in protecting the ocean. Again, to everyone watching, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. That is the end of our conversation today. That is the end of our webcast series for the year. And we will see you again in the fall for our new challenge. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.